The hour of 9:02 having been reached, we will begin our work as a subcommittee. Do we have authors? We see the honorable gentleman from the Central Valley, Mr. Viaduct. Please come. Oh, goodness. Mr. Cannella. No. You're much more handsome. I can say that objectively. I just like cherries, so he's a cherry farmer, so. No, you have. SB 493 is the order. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. SB 493 provides cities a solution to a problem many are facing when it comes to the ways in which they elect their councilmen. Since the passage of the California Voting Rights Act of 2001, many cities have switched from electing the city councils at large to by district. Those continuing to use increasingly found themselves faced with lawsuits asserting that racially polarized voting is occurring and demanding that district-based elections be implemented. While there is no legal requirement, the cities now utilize at-large elections. Switch to district elections.
Pardon me a moment, Senator. We'll establish a quorum. Secretary.
Ridley Thomas.
Here.
Grove. Here. Travis Allen. Gatto. Gordon.
Here.
Mullen. Perea.
Here.
We have a quorum.
We'll hold that motion, Mr. Perea. I think the senator has remarks that he'd like to incorporate into it. But continue, please.
While there's no legal requirement that cities now utilizing at-large elections switch to district-based election, in actuality they face a de facto ultimatum. Either switch to district elections or accept the inevitable CVRA lawsuit, which they are bound to lose, costing taxpayers money and legal fees. Either way, the outcome will be the same and taxpayers will front the cost. My bill, SB 493, would allow cities to switch to by-district city council elections by passing an ordinance that must still go through a public and transparent process. This will prove to be a valuable tool that many cities will take advantage of, will help meet the demands of the CVRA, and will protect taxpayer dollars. I've got some witnesses here in support, if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, and we've discussed amendments about limiting this provision to cities below 100,000. Are you comfortable with those amendments?
I'm comfortable because all of my cities that are not district elections are under 100,000, but the folks that are above 100,000 still face the lawsuits, but it protects my district, so I'm fine with it.
Excellent.
All right.
Go ahead.
And the Second Amendment in the analysis, are you comfortable with that? It references the findings. Yeah, the city take advantage of the bill to make findings and declaration when adopting an ordinance to provide for district-based elections. The exchange is being made with furtherance of the purposes of the California Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
So we have those two then. Thank you. Witnesses in support.
Alicia Lewis with the League of California Cities, in support of the measure as well. And I think the summary was great by the author. It's really coming down to the fact that even in the event that our cities go ahead and put it on the ballot, if it fails, there is not any insulation provided. This is apparent in the case with City of Highland, whose voters rejected district elections, and they still went through litigation afterwards. So at this point, there seems to be no end to addressing the issue unless you're switching. We've talked with our cities, we've reached out, and we think adding another tool to their tool belt on ways to address issues at the local level is the best option available. At this point, we see this as mirroring what Senator Block had done when he was in the Assembly. That's providing the same type of outlet that community colleges have available to them and are utilizing. It allows an efficient process to go into place. And the big thing is, let's save taxpayer money and focus on integrating these districts with the input from our communities. So with that, I urge your high support.
Thank you very much. Additional witnesses to support.
Johan Klisch, representing the City of Ontario. They support the bill.
Wonderful. Additional witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Stephen Nassman. I'm a council member with the City of Turlock. The City of Turlock would like to express our support for SB 493, which would allow cities to move to by-district elections through a municipal ordinance process. Since the passage of the California Voting Rights Act, many jurisdictions using at-large elections have increasingly found themselves faced with lawsuits asserting that racially polarized voting is occurring and demanding by-district elections be implemented. The provisions of the California Voting Rights Act allow the plaintiff's attorneys to recover generous attorney's fees and make the cost of fighting such lawsuits prohibitively expensive. Just a few years ago, we watched as a neighboring municipality fought the California Voting Rights Act suit all the way to the California Supreme Court and lost. In the end, their challenge cost taxpayers $4.7 million. Faced with the threat of a lawsuit, the city of Turlock acted quickly to hire a demographer, hold community meetings, and place a measure on the next available ballot. Although there was little disagreement on the need to move to by-district elections or what the district should look like, we were still required to place the matter on the ballot at a cost of $15,000 to our residents. After qualifying the measure for the ballot, we were informed that if the measure failed, it would serve as further evidence of racially polarized elections, and the council would have no other recourse but to wait for a suit and have a court mandate by-district elections. This, of course, would occur only after incurring significant legal expenses. Fortunately, due to the highly effective public engagement effort, the Institute of Local Government, and a strong public education effort, the measure passed with 70% of the vote, the highest passage rate for any district election question in the state of California. Turlock was lucky. In many other jurisdictions, the move to by-district elections can be highly contentious, and cities run a huge risk if the measure is rejected by voters. The City of Turlock believes SB 493 would give cities a much-needed tool that can be used to address concerns under the California Voting Rights Act in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. We sincerely appreciate your effort in introducing this legislation that will help cities save money by avoiding CVRA lawsuit and costs associated with placing a measure on the ballot. The City of Turlock urges you to support this legislation.
Thank you very much for coming up, Councilman, and thank you for your testimony. Sir?
Good morning, Tom Hallen, and I represent 5 small cities in the Central Valley ranging from, populations of 10 to 50,000 who have all received notices to sue. And they're, as I just reiterate very quickly, they're put in that conundrum of even if they put the measure on the ballot and it doesn't pass, they lose either way. It costs a minimum of probably $50,000 now just to hire the demographer and put it on the ballot in round numbers. If they get challenged, it's minimum $150,000, $300,000 just for these small jurisdictions to, even if they settle right after a lawsuit is just simply filed. So in my spare time, I serve on a community college board, so we just ask that we went to district elections, did not have this requirement. As another local agency, would just ask you to do the same for our cities.
Thank you for your testimony. Additional witnesses in support, witnesses in opposition, questions of the committee. This enjoys a due pass recommendation. Mr. Perea, as amended, Mr. Perea has moved. Our second. Would you like to close?
Yeah, just briefly. Thank you for this hearing. But the city of Modesto, just one city in my district, paid $3 million in attorney's fees and $1.7 million in their own fees, and they still have district elections. So This is not about district elections. If you don't like district elections, this is really not what this bill is about. It's giving local governments the tools to work with their communities and do what they think's right without paying $5 million, which is better served with police, fire, and parks than with attorneys.
Amen. We'll take that as a
present.
strong close. Yeah. Civic religious close. That was a preaching moment. Secretary, call the roll.
The motion is due pass as amended to the Committee on Local Government. Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas, aye. Grove. Aye. Grove, aye. Travis Allen. Gatto. Aye. Gatto, aye. Gordon. Not voting. Gordon, not voting. Mullen. Perea. Aye. Perea, aye.
Has 4 votes. The bill is out. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Senator Mendoza is next up. While you're coming up, we'll take up the consent calendar. We have item 5, SB 366 by Senator Nguyen. Secretary, call the roll.
Oh, we need a motion.
Oh, I'll move it. Second. And Mr. Gordon will second.
Ridley Thomas.
Aye.
Ridley Thomas, aye. Grove. Grove, aye. Travis Allen. Gatto. Aye. Gatto, aye. Gordon. Aye. Gordon, aye. Mullen. Perea. Aye. Perea, aye. The consent calendar is out.
Senator Mendoza, thank you for joining us. You have SB 505 up.
That's great. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate the opportunity to present. SB 505 provides the Secretary of State with the authority to inform voters using plain language text to describe the voter Bill of Rights. Under current law, the Secretary of State is required to print verbatim statutory language, which must be printed in full for all voters, for all voter information guides, and posted at all polling locations. Even though the statute is written with voters in mind, the provisions are still worded in complicated legislative language and inadvertently presents unnecessary challenges to voters who are trying to understand the law as it affects them. Voters deserve clear communication during elections so that they know how they can receive the help they need with polling problems. This bill allows the Secretary of State to use plain language techniques and will help ensure voters are better informed about their key electoral rights.
We have a motion and a second by Gatto and Gordon. Would you like to continue or go to witnesses?
Just if we could go to witnesses, just to add on.
All righty. Senator, witnesses in support?
James Schwab on behalf of Secretary of State Alex Padilla. The Secretary is pleased to sponsor SB 505. The Voter Bill of Rights is provided to voters in each election cycle in the state ballot pamphlet. The document helps voters understand their eligibility, how they can overcome problems at a polling place, their rights to be free from intimidation, and other important election information. Fortunately, the Voter Bill of Rights is also provided in voters as written in the California Code of Law. Last year, the Center for Civic Design surveyed non-voters and infrequent voters about how they access different election information. Their survey found that both non-voters and infrequent voters found the Voter Bill of Rights useful, but that the language in which it was written can be confusing. The Voter Bill of Rights should be accessible and easily understood by all eligible voters. SB 505 will help reduce confusion and increase the language accessibility of the Voter Bill of Rights. I ask for your aye vote.
Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
Thank you. I'm Jill Levine, Registrar of Voters for Sacramento County, representing California Association of Clerk and Election Officials, and we support this bill. Voters do need to know what their rights are, and we quite often get these questions, and they ask us to try to figure out what the legalese is. And it's very beneficial to have this in plain language, and also when we have to translate it into the other languages, starting with the plain language edition is much easier for the translation. So we support this bill, and thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support.
Trudy Schaefer, representing the League of Women Voters. Mr. Chair and members, the League of Women Voters of California Ed Fund worked with the Center for Civic Design to publish a manual, a best practices manual for official voter information guides. And one of the main points was that voters definitely need materials that are designed to be easy to read and written in a language that voters can understand. So we salute SB 505 as an important first application of those principles.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Additional witnesses in support? Witnesses in opposition? Questions of the committee? Ms. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do have several questions. I might be missing something. I know I'm the only non-college educated person on this committee, so we'll start with that.
But your experience and countenance and wisdom speaks leagues, Vice Chair.
I have
we think very highly of your opinions.
I have the language for the VBR in front of me, and I just need anyone, either the sponsor, the Secretary of State's office, the Registrar of Voters office, anyone on the committee, what's not clear about you have the right to cast a ballot if you are a valid registered voter. A valid registered voter means a United States citizen who is a resident of this state. That means they have to live in California, I would assume, right? Is that what that means to you? That who is at least 18 years of age. That means they can't be below 18. They have to be 18. That they are not in prison or on parole or for a conviction of a felony, and that they are registered to vote in their current residence, meaning that they have to live or vote in the house that they're registered to vote in. You have the right to cast a provisional ballot if your name is not listed in the voting rolls. Sounds pretty simple. If you go there, your name's not listed, you have the right to cast a provisional ballot. You have the right to cast a ballot if you are present in the line of a voting place prior to the close of the polls. That means if you're in line and the polls are closing, you still have the right to cast a ballot. That sounds pretty simple. You have the right to cast a secret ballot. And I don't see the confusion there. And you have the right to receive a new ballot if your prior casting ballot you believe you made a mistake. So you can get a new ballot if you think you made a mistake. So what in that does the Secretary of State's office want to change? And in that particular language, it was created over a decade ago by a bipartisan legislative body to create this simple, very basic language that's very easy to understand. And now we're going to give full authority to one person without any submission or input from the legislative body, other than here, just do whatever you want to make it clear and concise. So under that, based on what I just read, I'd like to hear from the sponsor of the bill, the Secretary of State's office, what is not clear and concise, and what is it that you want to change?
No, I'll
or that your boss
thoughts first,
sure,
and I'll let him answer
wants
if
to
that's
change.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
The plain language techniques are very useful and very beneficial, especially for second language citizens who maybe English was not their primary language. So when you see words like voting rolls, I mean, what do rolls mean? When you talk about a spoiled ballot, okay, we know what that means. We've lived it, but some folks, they don't just show up to the polls. They don't live and breathe politics like we do. When you show up and start talking about precinct or warrant production, I mean, I don't know. You know, for some voters, maybe I don't know what a warrant production is. I don't. You know, there's certain words that we probably don't need in here.
Sure.
So, I'll let the Secretary say that further expand on that. His office.
Yeah, the Secretary believes that the way it's written is there's a lot of sort of terminology that we're familiar with because we're involved with the policy and elections day to day. But as the Senator pointed out, Part 8 of the Voter Bill writes, you have the right to election materials in another language if there are sufficient residents in your precinct to warrant production. So that's not necessarily clear, I think, to the average voter, especially voters who are infrequent. 31. And one of the challenges, too, is when you translate words, one of the principles of translations is you try to translate directly the word to the next language. And so words like warrant, precinct, spoiled ballot, voting rolls aren't easy to translate into the 9 languages that we cover in California.
I would add, Vice Chair, that the use of the phrase secret ballot I think can be problematic, and with respect to the education level of voters across the state, it varies disparately. We have a number of voters who are high school or high school equivalent educated, and I think a part of the plain language standard, correct me if I'm wrong, is basically a 5th grade level, 5th or 6th grade level in terms of the plain language standard. So though it was a decade ago that this was formulated, it's likely that this needs another touch, and as the voting system changes, it'll require different language. If precincts change, what a precinct is changes, it'll be appropriate, and that's why it enjoys a due pass recommendation.
I appreciate the chair's comments. I do see we're saying line 31 where it says you have the right to an election materials in other language if there is sufficient residents in your precinct to warrant that production, meaning that's you have to have that 5% or 3% or whatever that number is. I get that. So I understand that. So specifically, does anybody have, or can anybody tell me what specifically you want to change in this language, or what the Secretary of State's, what does he want to change? What's his opinion? And I guess if he has specific language he wants to change, why isn't he bringing that language to us as a legislative body to vote on that language instead of just arbitrarily saying, go have at it, whatever you want to change, have a happy day?
I think the Secretary's process is we have a Language Accessibility Advisory Committee, and we would have a stakeholder process on figuring out not only how do you word it in English, but words that you can translate into the 9 languages that California provides. And so that stakeholder process would produce recommendations and best words and phrases that we would then change the voter bill of rights to reflect that.
And it would go through legal counsel and the like.
And all of my colleagues are really okay with not having that language come back to this legislative body for approval. That's what alarms me. I'd like to see the Secretary of State sponsor a bill saying, this is the language I want to change. What do you guys think? Is everybody that you represent, the millions of people that you represent in the state of California, okay with this language based on your vote to represent them? And then we move forward. I think that's a better way to approach it than just giving somebody carte blanche. So I'm an absolute no vote. Thank you for your time.
No problem. Thank you, Vice Chair. Additional questions? The bill's been moved and seconded. You may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity. We had a good discussion on this matter. I do think that if the Secretary of State happens to not do his or her job adequately, or we disagree with some of the content of the Bill of Rights, I think this body has every right to come back and say, you know what, you overstep your boundaries. We're going to go ahead and take it back. So I think at this point we're not there yet. I think it's we want to allow him the opportunity to fix some of the things that need to be fixed in this voter Bill of Rights. So respectfully, I ask for your vote. Thank you.
With that, Secretary, call the roll.
The motion is due passed to Committee on Appropriations. Ridley Thomas?
Aye.
Ridley Thomas, aye. Grove? Grove, no. Travis Allen? Gatto? Aye. Gatto, aye. Gordon? Aye. Gordon, aye. Mullen? Perea? Aye. Perea, aye. Ayes 4, noes 1.
The bill is out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Waso, SB 415. No, he pulled that one. That one has been pulled. I should have announced that. SB 303 by Senator Mendoza, 330 has been pulled by the author for today's hearing. Yes.
Mr. Chair, Assembly members, good morning. It's a pleasure to be here. It's my honor to present SB 415, the California Voter Participation Rights Act. Voter turnout in California has fallen to increasingly embarrassingly low levels. Less than 45% of registered voters came out to vote in the last gubernatorial election, compared to 60% in 2010 and 72% in 2012 elections. As embarrassing as these numbers are, the turnout in our state's local elections held in off-year elections are even worse. And this bill would give voters the right to challenge local government for holding elections on dates that result in a significant decrease in voter turnout compared to a statewide election. So it creates...
Moves Ridley Thomas seconds.
What's that? Thank you very much. So this bill is really intended to save local government money and increase voter participation in elections, and we would appreciate your support.
Witnesses in support.
Nicholas Idorn with California Common Cause. Common Cause is in strong support of SB 415. We think this promises to significantly increase voter turnout in California. As everyone's well aware, last year we achieved record low in voter turnout. But if we think state voter turnout is bad, local government voter turnout in odd-year elections is even worse. In fact, Los Angeles had single-digit turnout. We think this is an opportunity to really increase turnout, and we think the research really backs it up, that if your concern is local voter turnout, the single best tool you can do is election consolidation. I'd like to really briefly point out two studies to the committee. There was a study in 2013, a horizontal study of 350 cities in California that found that consolidating elections on average led to 25 to 36% increase in voter turnout. There's also a 2010 longitudinal study that looked at school districts that had shifted from odd-year elections to consolidated elections and saw a 150% increase in turnout. We think 415 offers a tailored solution. We're in support.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in support. Witnesses in opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, Bob Reeb with Reeb Government Relations on behalf of the Desert Water Agency. We would point to studies and analysis that indicates when you have a very lengthy ballot and you have the special districts and school districts falling at the end, sometimes 60 races down from the top of the ballot, that we find voter roll-off and voter fatigue. And it also is a challenge for local water agencies or other special districts to capture voter attention when there's signs for the president and senators and assembly members, and there's that top of the ballot excitement. No one pays attention to the lower districts. So we believe that while there are studies that show you will see greater voter turnout overall, that we'll see significant voter roll-off and voter fatigue, and we won't see a lot of impact on those lower races. Our counties and our populations are different in California. We have rural counties where we have few special districts, and we have Los Angeles where there's probably 60 to 90 special districts. So we think it's best to leave this decision at the local level with the election officials and the political subdivisions to determine when the best time is. Thank you.
Thank you. Additional witnesses in opposition. Questions of the committee. I think Mr. Gatto and Mr. Gordon.
So thank you, everybody who came up here and testified on this.
I didn't see it. I'm sorry.
I have often lamented the low voter turnout in city elections. There's almost a direct correlation with the lack of an ability of an election to affect your life with the voter turnout. Who's the president of the United States? I submit, in presidential elections, we have 80% turnout.
Barack Hussein Obama, just for the record.
Oh, thank you. Who the president of the United States is not going to affect your daily life much unless the country goes to war and you get drafted. But in a city council race, that city council person approves a bar right around the corner from your house. You're going to have loud music till 2 a.m. and people urinating on your lawn. And that's the reality. And if your trees aren't trimmed and your potholes aren't filled, that affects your daily life. You're driving to work, and and it's amazing how the voter turnout ranges from 80% in presidential to 10%, 9% in local municipal elections. I do think, though, that the opposition has a point, and I don't know the answer on how to deal with this. When a ballot is too long, when you get to the bottom of a ballot, it makes it harder for that candidate to break through. When the president campaigns and the super PACs have bought the airwaves, and those of us running for Senate and Assembly have paid for the mailboxes, and and then you got somebody who's now 50th on the ballot for such an important election, who's going to affect the potholes and the tree trimming and the development of a city. It's hard for that person to break through, to get the mail out, to get people interested, and to get them to pay attention. So I guess the question is, how do we balance this? I mean, how do we balance this?
Mr. Senator, before you address the point, I would also add that turnout still goes up in the 50th on the ballot position, sometimes as much as 5 to 10% in a lower situation, and significantly higher depending on the jurisdiction. There's also, particularly for Los Angeles, a measure afoot in order to allow counties to move local races higher for higher profile elections, a la the mayoralty of the city of Los Angeles and the like, which under current law would sit after the judges' races. So it would be 20th or 30th on a ballot, but
that's a measure we could get behind. If
it'll
you
be
could,
before us in about a month. So
this is you're talking an LA County ballot initiative, right?
No, this is a
bill
proposal. This is
Terrific.
a legislative proposal that the majority leader of this House and I are working on with
Terrific.
LA Chamber, the LA Labor Fed, and the City and County of Los Angeles in light of the consolidation issue.
Now that solves the issue of it, being on the end of a ballot, and it might solve the drop-off issue, but it does not solve the issue of some poor guy or gal running for Podunk City Council, and they have a budget of $10,000, which is big in the city of Podunk.
Such a lovely place.
Well, and Shannon Grove represents it. I'm just kidding. Oh, Ms. Grove.
Point is not well taken. That point is
point
not
of personal
well taken.
privilege. Go ahead. Have at it.
I'll be kind and say,
I should have said Mr. Perea.
You should be sitting on this side of the aisle in this committee.
Oh, wow.
Point is well taken. Senator
All right, Senator, please address this if you would.
When you guys finish, I'll wait for you guys.
Let's fight the colloquy, right?
I don't want to become part of this, but on the
you
but
were
on
a few
the-
years
I
ago.
already
Come
am,
on
I'm
back.
sorry. But on the example of the bar, some would argue that living next to a bar would solve a lot more problems for them. I wouldn't make that argument, but I'm just saying some would. But this is why we crafted the bill that we did, and there is some truth to lengthy ballots. But empirical data has found that even when a jurisdiction has a lengthy ballot and there is voter
fatigue on looking at a large number of initiatives. It's that what trails off is significantly lower than when you have off-year elections. When you have off-year elections, you have significant reductions in voter turnout. Now, in many cases, no amount for a small candidate running in a small seat, there's nothing that they can do to really get the turnout to come out for them in that spectrum. You know that's accurate unless there is an issue locally that has just blown up, that has pretty much gotten everybody so outraged at the local government that it inspires them to go to the ballots. And this is the thing about this bill. This bill doesn't mandate anything. It doesn't create any kind of condition in and of itself, other than if somebody can make the case that if he can make the case that there's a trail off in when you combine elections, and you can make that argument in a court of law and convince a judge and a jury that changing an off-year election to a regular election will not increase voter turnout, then if they can prove that, we've got nothing to talk about. But generally speaking, just give you an example. San Francisco, which has the second largest voter turnout of any large city in the country, saw a voter turnout of 2013 off-year election that was 30% lower than the voter turnout in 2012.
Yeah, but I'm not talking voter turnout. What I'm talking about is the concept that my consultant tells me that the average time someone takes a voter to read the materials we mail them is 11 seconds. And that's the time it takes to walk from the mailbox to the garbage can. And, we typically mail 20, 30 pieces of mail in an election. When you have the president, hold on. When you have the president and you have the senator and you have a state senate campaign and an assembly campaign and all this stuff in one election, and all of us who have $1 million, $500,000 to spend, we are flooding the mailboxes with materials. And then there's that city council person who's got great ideas and wants to communicate them. How does that person break through during an even year?
During an off-year election, 30% less people spend zero time reviewing a ballot.
Yeah, of course, but still, that person, at least people will read their materials, and whether they show up or vote, that's another story. But
I think, Mr. Gatto, the Senator Hueso has answered your question. Do you have another?
One might argue he's answered it, but
the chair is arguing that he has. Do you have another question?
Well, it's nice to see the chair siding on the senator's side, but yeah, I do have another question, and I'd like to ask if it's okay with the chair.
Certainly.
All right, thank you. So I'm supporting this bill today. I've supported similar bills. The challenge that I think I throw up to all of us who care about this, and I know you care about this a lot, is we have to do something to make it where these other committees, these other candidates have the ability to break through. Maybe it's public financing for local elections. Maybe it's something like that, and I know a lot of cities do that. But it's hard for them to break through when all of us big folks at the state level are spending tons of money.
And I would agree that more voters need to take more time reviewing the ballot. I would agree that, and that is an entirely different campaign. And there are some government agencies that have to find ways to be more relevant to the voters, and the people that fill those seats also have to work harder to impress upon the electorate how important their votes are to their daily lives. All that is part of a greater strategy. We all have to work on that. And I think our conduct here and what we do every day has a big impact in affecting the electorate. And what we do can have a chilling effect on the voter turnout as well by eroding the public's confidence in their government. Either you can argue, well, we're doing such a great job they don't come out to vote, or we're doing such a bad job. They just become frustrated. And our conduct can also get people so frustrated that they lose hope that government is part of their lives in a way, in a meaningful way. We have to work harder on that. This bill targets people that are intentionally having off-year elections to reduce voter turnout. Think about voter fatigue when you have to vote in a jurisdiction every single year you're going to the ballot, every single year. That is also a condition that contributes to voter fatigue. And maybe voters will spend more time, contemplating what's before them when they don't feel that they're being barraged by mail pieces and advertisements and information about elections on just a constant basis. I've been involved in elections myself where people just say, stop sending me information. If you continue, I'm not even going to vote. And it's unfortunate that they take that position but at the same time they feel that oftentimes they want some peace from the electoral process. Us that love politics would love to see that happening and increasing our participation in every action, and we'd love to be engaged constantly, but there are other people that don't. I think this is intended to promote more democracy. It's intended to bring more people out to the polls, and hopefully when they're engaged in that election, they're listening more than they are in an election where they've already decided they're not going to come out and vote for it. And I'm hoping that's what the case with this bill. I appreciate your supports and your excellent questions. Thank you very much. Thank you, too.
Thank you, Senator. No further questions, Mr. Gatto? No. All right, we're going to go to the Vice Chair, Mr. Gordon and Mr. Mullen. Please be succinct.